Hello, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, I've hit the big button. That's what I always say at the start of every podcast.
I'm taking a sip of my tea.
Okay, and I'm watching you. So we are actually sitting right here in the offices of the president of Rapido Trains, Jason Shron.
How's it going, eh?
Beauty, eh? Kick saving beauty.
Beauty goal.
Beauty, yeah. Beauty
Rapido is a beauty way to go.
Yeah. Take off, eh?
Hoser.
So we are situated in a place called Markham, Ontario, which is technically it's a suburb of Toronto, but it's Toronto. It's the north side of Toronto.
Yeah, we're just north of Steeles Avenue. That's northern boundary border.
Yeah, we're very, very close to the actual metropolitan part of Toronto. How long have you been in this location?
We've been here since 2013. It's almost exactly 7 years.
Okay.
Funny, January 2013, Rapido was operating transition from my basement. Really? And it was the same time that we launched the Train in the Basement video. And so Janet's in one part of the basement, Dan's in another part of the basement, and I am in the train with national media coming in and out all day. It was a zoo, and I actually got a huge order from one of our very good customers and lost it because it was so much in transition. Right. So when we delivered our F9Bs a year later, this customer calls me and says, I ordered 207 of those, and you gave me none.
Wow.
At one point, a shipment of Osgood Bradley coaches arrived on my driveway. And we had to hand bomb it into the basement. Luckily, the model railroad hadn't been started yet. Now we couldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But we moved to Markham in 2013, and then we moved to this location in 2015, and then we expanded in last year.
Yeah. So you took over another unit here?
We took over another unit. So we expanded the year before by renting some extra office space, but now we're got to be around 8,000 or 9,000 square feet now. So we're a decent size. And seeing as we don't have very much inventory, we carry very little inventory. We actually it's a lot of office space for our design team and warranty repair guys and everything like that.
First thing I noticed in here was how many people were here that I'd never seen before.
Yeah, we've really grown. So Rapido has, between 2016 and 2019, we doubled in sales. And between 2013 and 2016, we doubled in sales. So in those 6 years, 2013, 2019, we multiplied by a factor of 4. Wow. And so I think one of our biggest challenges has been managing that growth. It's very difficult to go from a company that is like 4 people to one that's now approaching 20. The real challenge is I used to do all the project management in my head, right? So we're the only people designing trains were Bill and me. Essentially. Right. And Bill did a lot of the grunt work of design, the artworks and the research and all this stuff. But when it came to the PR marketing, that was all me, and it was all maintained in my head. So Bill would say, okay, the artworks are done. We'd communicate with the factory. We get samples in or whatever. And to do a launch, for example, I would have to do a dozen different things. Or when it was, when they're in production, I had to make sure the instructions were written. I used to write all the instructions myself. Now Josh and Bill do a lot of that. But I would write the instructions. I would design the instructions. I'd make sure the factory knows what goes into every poly bag inside. All these little pieces, plus the marketing and the Facebook posts and the YouTube videos. So it got to the point where I just couldn't manage it anymore. And this actually happened a couple of years ago, where I was just starting to feel totally overwhelmed. Right. And that's why there's more people here. I still lead most of the PR marketing. Jordan is now doing a lot more of that. And from a design perspective, I do almost no project design now. So when I started Rapido 15 years ago, I was doing all the project design. Right. Now I do almost none of the project design, because if you leave it with me, so much comes on my desk in a given day with running this larger company that the designs will sit for days with no response to the factory saying fix it. Like, I just don't have time. So I'll say, like, I'm right now, there's a British bus that I'm the lead designer on, and it's like one correction I've been trying to get done for 3 days, and I just haven't had the hour of focus time. to be able to do that one correction. So we can't approve that bus for any tooling until I do the one correction and do the final review. It's not like it might happen. I've got a business trip coming up. It may happen while I'm sitting on a plane or whatever, but it's a challenge. So that managing our growth has been really, really a challenge. We've managed to avoid most of the major pitfalls. For example, I forgot at one point we were doing an FP7 locomotive, and I didn't respond to the factory on the circuit board, so they used our old FP9 circuit board. But we actually had improvements on the FP7 over the FP9A. Like we want to be able to turn the number boards on and off and stuff like that. So luckily, Mohan, who's our COO, was able to design a secondary circuit boards. Then the factory had to then wire in the second circuit board so we can get all the lighting features that we wanted. But it was my fault.
Right.
I had so much on my plate. I said, oh my God, I haven't done a circuit board review. Right. And it was at that point the circuit boards were already installed. So that's what I mean by managing the growth. That's been a challenge.
So was there a day when you kind of went, or was there a moment when you kind of went, all right, I gotta suck it up here and start hiring some more people to help me out?
It was more than just a moment. It was also the stress was really, really getting to me, and the anxiety was really, really getting to me. And I've certainly had a number of breakdowns in my life, as many people have, where I've dealt with mental health issues and being overcome by anxiety. Right. and that got particular as we were going through these growing pains that got really bad, to the point where I even questioned, a year or two ago, do I want to do this anymore?
Right. Because
the stress was just enormous. We're always running and putting out fires because one person can't manage 20 projects in his head.
No.
So Mohan's been a big help. He started with us just helping out, and then became chief of projects in 2019, and now he's COO. So he's now organizing all of that stuff that I used to keep in my head. He's organizing, but we're still not there yet. We're not out of the woods in terms of being a totally self-supporting system. There has to be less involvement of my brain in the daily operation of Rapido. So on the order management, warranty repairs, I'm not involved with that anymore, really. That's all done by my team. The project design, a lot of it's done by my team, but I will review. So I'll go over the drawings at the end or I'll be involved in meetings where we talk about what features to include or whatever else. But when it comes to the PR marketing, I'm still very much doing most of it. So hopefully with Jordan coming in now, he's moved into that department, and we've got Bobby who's working for us from the States. He wants to do more of the marketing and PR. So. And Josh has been doing our ads now for over a year. So it's like, we've got a team, but we're not there yet. So it's still quite stressful at times. I just today, I turned to Jordan and said, Jordan, did we send a press release out for our latest locomotive announcement? And Jordan said, nope. Well, I realized this was all something that I would keep in my head.
Yeah.
Right. And I would just know you got to send a press release out. Well, now so Jordan and I sat down this morning and I trained Jordan. This is how we do a Rapido press release.
See, to me, I think this is a perfect example of my argument of this is the wild, wild west of model railroading, because the company's probably grown faster than you expected. What did I say over the last couple of years?
Oh, much faster. Yeah, I didn't expect. When we moved in 2013 into 2,000 square foot space, I thought this is good for 10 years. We don't need any more. And within 2 years, we outgrew it.
Yeah.
And we ended up going into 4,000 something square foot space. And then I thought that was going to last for a long time, right? Then when we needed more office space because we had no room, so we rented another office out upstairs. When we expanded this office last year, I thought, we're good now. Okay?
Yeah.
But 2019 sales surged. And the thing is that you need to have enough people to manage future growth, right? So we're designing products, some of which now aren't coming out till mid to late 2021. So we need people here to actually do that, as well as maintain all the current stuff that's been going, all the stuff we're doing now. So you always have to be thinking 18 months ahead, always in this business. So we've got to have enough people here to manage us for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
So what's ended up happening now is we've got an office now with 2 people, and we haven't had a doubled up office ever in the history of Rapido. and we now have a double up office. And there is a reason for that. We had a real problem in 2019 with some of our motors. in some of our models, and they were not as strong as we would have liked, and the weakness of the motors was not an issue under the older decoders that we use, but the newer decoders that we use, the motors couldn't handle the strain, the higher voltage. So we've had a lot of models returned for fixing. We stand by our products, so we'll fix any model that's got a defect like that.
Right.
So I've had to hire 2 new warranty guys. We've got 3 full-time warranty people working on these motor repairs, and it's a big job. We didn't expect that, but we own up to these kind of things, and it's a challenge for us.
That's, I think, what makes Rapido is it's first class operation from bottom up.
Oh, the vast majority of our customers are so understanding. Because we've been so upfront about this, the vast majority of our customers just appreciate, and we've had like a 99%, I don't have the exact numbers, around 99% satisfaction rate when the models come back to them. Because what we do is we ordered stronger motors from a new motor vendor. We've got new motherboards. So if anyone has a motor failure, we will do a full change out. It takes time. So there's a bit of a backlog now of a couple months, but people are really, really happy when the models come back.
You just basically rebuild the locomotive.
Yeah,
so
we rebuild. Actually, the longest time is we then have to, we have to make sure it looks good. So if we take a model apart and paint gets chipped or a part gets bent, we got to fix the paint or replace the part. That actually takes more time than the motor changeout.
Okay.
So it's just making sure that we deliver back to our customers a model as good or better looking than when they sent it to us.
All right.
Right. That's our challenge. But it's a challenge, also learning experience. We now understand a lot more about motors. And so we know that all of our models going forward are going to be built like tanks, motor-wise, because you only go through something like this once.
yeah. If you go through it twice, and you're not picking up on.
Right. So our FA2s, which as the time of recording this are being delivered now, have like these awesome super powered motors inside them.
Yeah.
So you got to deal with one thing at a time, right?
I'm not sure if you want to talk about this on the air, but we were talking about this briefly before we started recording, and I don't think it's a bad subject, but while this podcast is about finding out as much as we can about the industry and the people in it and everything else, I don't want anybody answering any questions they don't want to answer. But I like to have a discussion. So I thought we were having a really good discussion. I was disappointed when you were telling me about how hard it is on you about some of the people that complain, because I'm very excited about the new world of model railroading. I think social media is connecting everybody together. I think it's going to make the hobby grow like crazy. But one of the downsides is the detractors that seem to have a platform, and yet there's such a small percentage. And I was touched by how much it bothered you, and I think this is a good opportunity to talk briefly about. There's this very, very. It doesn't matter what kind of locomotive you produce, somebody's going to find something wrong with it,
right?
And then they have this platform. And I personally think that eventually, like I say, I think this is the wild, wild west. I think those people will eventually just be excused as, they have a computer, but nobody wants to listen to them anymore. But what you say right now, it does have an effect on you.
I think people forget when I understand most people in our hobby are very passionate about their hobby, and if you have been studying a locomotive or passenger car, freight car your whole life, and you want it to be perfect, right? But it's very easy to forget that the models that we bring out are labors of love, that everybody at Rapido, even with all the expanded staff, there's still only 3 people in this office who are not model railroaders of some kind. Everybody else is a model railroader. All the project designers are model railroaders first, who found themselves in a model train business. The same story with me. I mean, I started Rapido to get the models that I wanted for my lathe, right?
Yeah.
I was kit bashing underbody equipment on Via cars when I was 13. So there's a lot of passion here, but people forget that we're human beings and that we put a lot of love, heart, and soul into each of these models. If something goes wrong, such as like RS-18 motor problems, right? That hurts us. I mean, say one guy may be frustrated that he spent $900 or $1,000 in locomotives, and now 1 or 2 of them have a problem. Think of it when Dan Darnell spent 2 years designing this locomotive and putting all his time into the locomotive and designed a gorgeous locomotive. I mean, look at what RS-18s before. You had to kit bash from an Atlas RS-11, or there was a proto model made years and years ago. The dimensions were wrong. You know, this is the ultimate RS-18 model, and it looks stunning.
Yeah.
But all people are talking about is the motor problems. And it hurts, right? Especially when people say, oh, this is typical of Rapido or whatever else. You know, like Dan now looks at, I mean, you can talk to him about this. I don't know if he'll open up or not, but, you know, because it still hurts him. He looks at the model and he doesn't see the gorgeous model. He just sees the problem because of so much negativity he sees online. And I was running my RS-18s a few weeks ago, and I just called Dan. I said, Dan, this is like one of the most beautiful engines I've ever seen. He said, yeah, well, I know, but.
Yeah.
Right. And so that negativity really hurts. Same thing. If you look at, sometimes we have to make choices. So there we make a choice. A good example is the B36-7. We had to make choices to certain prototype details that we couldn't do. This is a more complex model because for a time we thought we could do all these different changes, but they just weren't economically feasible. Right. And some guys got really, really, really upset about it. And they made very clear through emails and through forums how upset they were. And it was before the model had even arrived. There was so much negativity out there. Well, I'll tell you what, the model arrived and has been a huge seller, and the vast majority of feedback has been really positive. Yeah. In some cases, from people who were negative, said, I got my models and I love them.
Yeah.
So my concern is not the constructive criticism, which I think is always good.
Yes.
Criticism is always good. To the point where we posted photos of our M420 model, and because of the angle of the shot, it looked like the cab was too tall. So we went back and measured like 5 times. And the cab's not too tall, but the low angle of the shot made it look too tall. But we'll check that. That was constructive criticism. Right. The negativity, which sometimes leads to personal attacks. You know, there's one forum where I told my team, we are not participating on it online anymore. We are not posting any messages. They can talk about us. That's fine. But the negativity was getting to the point where my team members didn't want to open their computer in the morning.
Yeah.
Right. So you spend a year or two designing a product. It's not 100%. Maybe it's 95%. Maybe it's 97%. Whatever. It's a good model. And every time you open your computer, you look on the forums where you want to hang out as a model railroader, not even as a manufacturer, and you're just being attacked. You know, so that's what really is hard.
Yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is, a lot of the guys who will be very, very negative on the forums in person are real sweethearts.
Yes.
I think that it's like the keyboard warrior, something it brings it out. And I had an employee once who would go on Reddit and would be like, showing people how dumb they were on Reddit and proving how what they were saying was wrong and how he knows better. And I said to him, what's the point of doing that? Well, I got to show them. I got to tell them. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? All you've done is ruin that guy's day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, and I've known you now for quite a few years, and your heart is you're passionate model railroader. That if there is like Dave Abeley's, he was talking to me about the B36,
right?
And he was very bothered by the fact that there was negativity about it. And he's like, "This is a spectacular model." And when you think about where we came from just a few years ago, I mean, I can remember buying an Atlas GP7 and you'd shave the molded handrails off it, you know, or hand grabs off it. And you'd put on, and now it's kind of like the thing comes to you ready to go. And people are it's the negativity that we're going to have. I think it will just disappear.
Well,
it won't.
We had a customer, Lionel, who on the B36 on the Santa Fe Stratolite Beacon factory used a LED that was too dark. That was not our original plan when we were surprised when they arrived. And in the lighting at the factory, I couldn't even see it. But when you brought it home, put on a layout, it came out too dark. Most people have said, look, it's a Stratolite Beacon. It's working. What are you going to do about it? Right. And that's been our attitude. I mean, we'll send people, we're getting new ones made. We'll send them a new one if they want for free. But somebody actually wrote to us and said, if you can't change the Stratolite Beacon to a more correct color, I'm going to return my engines. I said, hang on a second. Like, It's the only ever model of a B36-7. It's the first ready-to-run model with a working Stratolite beacon, but because the LEDs are too dark, you want to return your whole engine. Like, I just don't understand.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think of is, again, it comes down to that passion, and people get so caught up in it that one little negative thing, it's like you almost want to think it's like an obsessive compulsive disorder,
Yes.
like one little negative thing, and it ruins their love of the whole item. I say, look at the 99% that is positive and just accept that 1%'s not exactly as it should be, but 99% of it is.
Well, yeah.
And it's so hard. I think this is in human nature. I mean, I get really upset when I read the criticisms of us online, right? And at one point, my wife came up to me and said, like, she could saw I was really down, and she said, "How many people are?" Well, there's these 4 guys who are. She said, 4 guys? Yeah, but there's lots and lots of us. She said, "Hang on a second, 4 guys?
Yeah.
Didn't you sell 4,000 of this model?" I said, yeah. And 4 guys are making you feel bad, right? That's 1/10 of 1%, but it still makes you feel crappy.
Well, it's the same when 3 years ago I started half of the podcasts are on a paid channel, and you can pay $5 a month and you can hear everything that we have. And when I started that, 3 guys just went up one side of me and down the other because I had the audacity to charge for some of the product. And finally I said to one guy, I said, "So let me get this straight. You're mad at me because I won't give you something for free." And it's always going to be such an infinitesimal number of people that are doing the damage.
Yeah.
That it's almost like I'm sure that as time goes on, because the hobby's growing so fast now, that I'm sure as time goes on, like, do you feel like the hobby's me personally, I feel like the hobby's going to explode. We're all going to be covered in model railroad goo.
I certainly see the hobbies growing. I do. Obviously, we're affected by external factors. Like as we're recording this, there was a recent dip in the stock market, so that type of thing's obviously going to. If somebody looks and says, "Oh, geez, my savings just went down by 10%,"
yeah,
that's going to have an effect. But I think that the hobby is growing. I think there are a lot of new people coming to the hobby, and when we go to shows, it's amazing how many people we see who are younger dads who are in the hobby. Which the hobby will always be strongest of guys who are retired or approaching retirement, but there's a lot of younger dads who are serious about getting the latest sound-equipped locomotive. And I know how hard it is being a father myself, though I'm not quite as young as I was. I've got 3 kids, and I know how you just can't afford to buy all the things. Having Rapido means that I have more model trains than I would never have been able to afford because I get a really good price on the Rapido models. But it's difficult to afford the hobby now. That's like a whole other discussion, right? It's that it can be very difficult to afford the hobby. So when I do see guys in their 30s, even in their 20s, spending their hard-earned money on model trains, I'm very heartened by that.
Well, and my argument with that is, like, I have Harley Davidsons. They cost $30,000 a copy or $25,000. I got 2 of them.
Right.
It's whatever you want to spend your money on.
Right.
And I also believe what everybody forgets, they talk about, the older people. And yet, practically, I've interviewed about 135 different people now. And of those 135, 132 of them have been in the hobby since they were 5.
Right.
Everybody's in the hobby since they were a kid. It's just somehow it's you're born with that wiring where you're fascinated by trains. So I don't think that the people as they get old, they become older, that it's that maybe they will spend more.
Right.
But those guys in their 25s and 30s, they're just as interested as they will be when they're 65. I don't see, they may not spend as much, but they're definitely just as into the hobby as they ever
absolutely.
were.
But from our perspective as a manufacturer, that we have to pay bills.
Yeah.
We find that the older guys just generally have more disposable income because kids have moved out.
Yeah.
You're not paying
absolutely.
You're not paying for summer camp. You're not paying for hockey practice. You're not hockey equipment. You're not paying for all that stuff anymore. And often the mortgage is almost paid off or paid off. The renos are done. I think we talked about this in our last conversation, about how it's that age when you get to the point where you've got more time, space, and money because the kids are older. And when the kids are young, your focus is on the kids. I mean, I would look at friends of mine who are retired, and they started their layout the same time I started mine, and theirs have scenery and full op sessions, right? And my layout is the Plywood Pacific, because they're not raising 3 kids anything. My oldest is only 14 at this point, so they haven't got a busy house. They've got the time that in the evening they're not worried about bedtime with the kids, right? So they've got the time to do it. So that is something that's always good to look forward to. And I'll tell you something so important. It is so important to have a hobby in your older years. I know people who retired and they become vegetables. They sit in front of the TV. They do nothing. Maybe volunteer at the food bank once a week or something like that. That's it, right? People who are passionate about a hobby. It doesn't have to be model railroading. It could be gardening. It could be RC. It could be horses. Whatever it is, they're passionate about something. They're going to live a long and healthy life. Yeah. Because it used to be that you retired at 65, you're dead at 67. Well, now you retire at 65, you're dead at 102. Yeah. Okay, so you've got a second life after retirement you got to prepare for. And a friend of mine, one of my best friends, he's 70. And he's an engineer. He's really handy. He does neat stuff. He's very involved. He goes to different classes. He goes to Israeli folk dancing class one night. He goes to courses and this, whatever. He's so active, right? As an active 7-year-old, but he's still full-time employed. And he's talking about within 5 years, he's going to sell the business. He wants to retire. And so I said, oh yeah, and what are you going to do? Yeah. Well, I do this class. I do that class. That's good. All the things that you do, that's 8 hours. Yeah. Okay. You have another 60 hours to fill. Yeah. Okay. You need a hobby. Well, I like to take pictures. Okay. You like taking pictures. That's 3 more hours. Yeah. Yeah. And it's what we're so fortunate as model railroaders is that we've got something to keep us. Every modeler I know who's working cannot wait till he's retired because he's got so much to do. Yeah. Right. And we're so fortunate to have that. And I wish that more people who are not in our hobby would see how beneficial it is, because there are guys that I know well in our hobby who are well into their 70s and into their 80s, and they're on the forums online. They're model railroading every day. They're going to op sessions and build sessions at their friends' houses. They're traveling to go rail fanning and go to NMRA conventions at 78. Yeah. All right. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I got 2 things to say, and then we'll get to the questions that the listeners sent in. So first off, I want to say to everybody, we really never met until, I think the first time we formally met is when James Wright came by. Yeah, we met at the Toronto Train Show. You had a clinic table like in 1999 or something like that. I know. And you gave me your business card and said I was invited to come to you to play trains. Oh, yeah. Oh, hang on a second. I probably should have put this on Do Not Disturb. Hang on. Let's turn off my It's an important call now. It's Bill Schneider calling. No, it's probably a question from one of my staff members, but they can wait. But anyways, you've been always very. I want everybody to know you've been very, very gracious to me. You've been very, very welcoming. You're the kind of person that the hobby needs. So not everybody. I don't know what the right word is. You're well known in the hobby, but not everybody has access to you, which they'd all like to have access to if they buy Rapido products. I'd like to be able to just pick up the phone and call Jason Shron. There aren't enough hours in the day, unfortunately. Exactly. However, I can tell everybody from my experience with Jason, he's somebody you would want to be friends with. And I just want everybody to know that. Oh, thanks very much, Lionel. Appreciate it. And the other thing is, so when you do buy something from Rapido, do you get like a 10% discount or? For me? Yeah. Well, let's just say that stuff tends to go missing from the warehouse. All right, I'm going to get to these questions. So what I did is I put on our Facebook page that I was going to come and see you. I do have to apologize. My chair is very squeaky. So yes. People are listening to the squeaky chair the whole way. It's the squeaky. This is the squeaky chair interview.
This is
It's better than the mosquitoes and the traffic.
Tell me about Bill Schneider while I'm looking for these questions, because my friend Chris Adams is very good friends with Bill Schneider.
Yes, he is. In fact, we filmed an FA2 video on Chris's layout.
Yes. And so how do you know Bill exactly?
So Bill worked for a distributor in the United States, and when I started at Rapido, every time we called, we'd just start chatting, and then it got to the point where we'd chat, and he'd be giving me really good advice. And it was vital advice. In fact, Rapido wouldn't be here today without a lot of that early days advice from Bill. And so after about a year or two of this, I finally said to Bill, do you want to come work for Rapido? And I think he had to think about it for at least 7 or 8 seconds. But his concern was he didn't want to move to Toronto. I said, no, I work from home. And so Bill's worked from his tiny attic for the last 11 years.
Okay. And what does he do? Like, is he in design? Is he in production?
Bill is a senior product designer. So he designs a lot of our stuff, writes instructions, writes our sales sheets to go to our dealers, the copy for the websites. Bill he's been with Rapido since almost day one. Rapido was me, and then it was me and Dan, and then it was me, Dan, Bill. Okay. And then Janet joined soon after that. So the four of us, Dan Garcia, Bill, Janet, and I, it was just the four of us from 2009 to late 2013 when Mike McGrattan joined us, who then later passed away. Right. But we were just the four of us for that whole starting period. And I'm telling you, we never turned a profit.
But eventually
we had no money.
That was like the very first year I started in business. My short story is my dad worked for IBM forever. He was a World War II guy, had no education, but he would go to night school, and he kept working his way up in IBM. Yeah. And then eventually around the age of 55, he was like, okay, what do I do next? Because he got to be like a department manager, and it was like, well, you're not going to be advanced. So my dad's like, okay, I'm out. Left. Through a couple of series of events, he ended up buying a driving school in Barrie, Ontario, which is just 40 miles north of where we're sitting.
You're still in the driving school business, right?
I still own it. It won't go away. And he worked till he dropped. And the thing of it was, it's like it just never goes. You know, when you were saying we had no money the first year, so I got involved. My dad got sick because he worked till he dropped. So then I took it over. The first year, we'd just been married. First winter, I made $128. My mother-in-law was not impressed. And she's like, why are you doing this?
Can you imagine how if your mother-in-law found out that you were taking all this money that you raised from family to start a model train company?
Yeah.
I was in England doing a PhD. I came back with no degree, no money, and no job.
And you married this guy, why?
Basically.
All right, my first question is from a guy in England, Matt Dawson, and he's interested to know is how much is Engage going to be a part of Rapido?
So we announced rather foolishly all at one time. We have 4 huge N-scale projects for the Canadian market that we've got on the go right now. And we made the mistake of announcing them all at once, and that just freaked everybody out. So I can't afford all this. Of course, it's going to go out over several years, but it was a mistake to announce it at once. So we've got a lot of Canadian N-scale stuff right now. We've got the American Horizon and Comet cars we're doing an N-scale. We've got more British N-scale that we're going to be doing. We are slowly expanding our N-scale offerings. The plan is to be committed to N-scale. The challenge with N-scale is that the numbers aren't anywhere close to HO, like anywhere close. So it's hard to make a business case in N-scale for some of the stuff we do in HO. You know, we've done the LRC, which is a Canadian passenger car, in HO and N-scale, and our total orders in N-scale, even including what the orders that will come in when the goods arrive, because we made a little extra inventory because people are on the fence. We want to make sure it runs well and everything like that. Is I think totaled out about 15% of what we sold in HO over the 3 runs of LRCs. Right.
I was talking to David Lilbach of Tangent.
Yeah.
And another really nice guy like yourself. And he just got into Engage. And I get the sense now from manufacturers that it's not going away, so maybe we should do something about it. Is that would that be a good way to describe?
Well, we got into N because of initially because of the demand for our Canadian passenger cars back in the late noughties, 2008 or so. And then Mike McGrattan really pushed forward our N-scale offerings.
Yeah.
But it's a real it's a different market, and you have to know the market. We have several N scalers here on staff, but I am at heart an HO guy. But
Sure,
an HO
yeah.
guy since I was 3, and we started building our first HO layout at home. So you have to know the market. So, like for example, the N scale -8, which is in production now, has been delayed several times, but it's in production now. The sales are through the roof, like unbelievable numbers. I'm so excited by those sales, right?
Yeah.
The N scale VRL F40, the sales are like under the ground. And they're 2 locomotives of the same era, right? Operated side by side, one passenger, one's freight. And like the difference is, we've got 2 versions of the N scale F40, the original rebuilt together. And HO, they did well enough for like 4 runs or something. We did really well in HO. And the 2 different F40s combined have 1/4 the sales of just the -8.
Wow.
Okay. So we've got to just keep postponing the F40. So we've been assuring people, don't worry, your wallet's going to be fine, because it's going to be a long time between the LRC cars coming out and the F40s, because we need more orders for these.
Yeah.
We're hoping actually that the LRC cars will come out and then people are going to order more F40s. But I would never have predicted that, because you look at our HO sales, we had a -8 HO, we've done the VIA F40. We've sold more VIA F40s than CN -8s and HO. So how do you go so opposite?
Yeah.
Right. It's hard you got to know the market. And it's my problem with N is that while I have a lot of N scale modelers on staff, I got nobody here who really knows the market. So what we do is we just talk to a lot of N scalers.
Yeah.
Brian Bousset has been really helpful, but he doesn't know the Canadian market. He knows the American market. He's been a huge help, and other N scale modelers that we speak to, but that we haven't found the N scale secret sauce yet, where every model we bring out is going to be successful.
I like that, the secret sauce. Okay, next one is from William Sampson. He lives in Minnesota. And he says, will they consider attempting the CN slab side hoppers or the unique CP cylindrical hoppers?
So we've already got cylindrical hoppers, the 3800s. I wonder which one he's talking about specifically. It's not one that I'm thinking of.
There's a picture of it here, if that helps.
I'm not the freight car guy, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Is that... I'm not sure what that is.
Well, okay, William. He doesn't know.
You got to talk to my freight guy. Josh is just over there. You can ask him.
We'll talk to Josh later.
So the slab sides were done by Trueline a long time ago. I don't know if demand has built up enough to do an all-new run of it, because it would be all new tooling. You have to think about the fact when making model trains is tooling is very expensive. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you an example. A locomotive could take 2 years to develop, and you could spend, no exaggeration, $100,000 on a diesel locomotive tooling. And you have to spend that $100,000 up front. Before you start production, where you actually start making those locomotives, the tooling guys have to get paid because their work's done.
Yeah.
They're done, right? So the $100,000 has to be paid to the mold guy. And then you've got your product costs. And everyone thinks, it costs $3. They sell for $300. It's nothing close. I'm not going to give you my actual costs, but they're a lot higher than that. Our costs have gone, let's just say our costs have gone up far higher than our retail prices have gone up. So our margins have actually come down considerably over the last 10 plus years. But so all that product cost is now being paid before you get. So we don't get paid from our customers until 30 days after we ship. So we bring in a shipment of locomotives. The direct customers, which is only 10% of our market, they pay right away by credit card. But the other 90% of our market, those are stores and distributors, and they pay after 30 days, right?
Yeah.
So think of it this way. It's a 2-year project, and you could have spent $250,000 or more on this project before you get a dime.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people ask us, are you going to do this or going to do that? There has to be a strong business case. Will I sell enough to make back that huge investment? Because that tooling investment is a very hard pill to swallow. And I mean, Rapido's got a line of credit, and it's got a lease line from the bank. But, if we tooled everything we wanted to, we would use up entire line of credit so quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the stuff we can finance from the idea is when you've got enough of a flow. So I sell product A today, I'm now paying for product B in 8 months or product C in a year from the money from product A, right? But here's the problem. We've found that because there's so many manufacturers on the market bringing so many good things, we can't go back to that tooling well for several years. So I'm going to give you an example. We did the FA2s in 2017, huge success, hugely successful project. And then for 2020, we announced in late 2018 or whenever it was, we announced a new run of FA2s, plus the FB2s. And you'd think we're now doing 2 types of locomotive. We're now going to sell, like, say, 1.5 times that first run. Well, the FA2 second run plus all the FB2s combined was only equal to the sales of the first run FA2s. We didn't increase them at all.
Okay.
It meant that we're making far fewer per road name, which of course increases the cost of production because it's very difficult when you're not making that sort of MOQ. You want to make a certain number per road name. So what we're finding is to go back to that tooling, we often have to wait 3 to 5 years before we can go back and do a new run, especially of locomotives. It takes a long time. Freight cars can be done more frequently, but locomotives and passenger cars take longer. Right? So you're spending $100,000 on tooling and you've got one run and you can't use that tooling again for 3 to 5 years. It's hugely, hugely expensive. And it's an old adage. If you want to make a small fortune in model railroading, you start with a large fortune.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the challenge. I'm just trying to get people to understand the costs involved. You're spending so much money 2 years before you actually see any money from it.
And that would go back, and let's not get stuck on this subject at all, but it bothered, it actually, to be completely honest with you, it bothered me to see how bothered you were about the people that are being negative when I first came into the office. And so let's not go rehash that in the same interview, but it's important for these people, these negative Nellies, to realize that, you're not spending a couple of grand and you go off and get your tooling. And this is a huge process. So the decisions you make aren't just made easily. And, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, the products that we have now compared to what we have 20 and 30 years ago.
Oh, when I started, there was nothing Canadian, almost nothing Canadian out there.
And
but let me interrupt you, Lyle. I want to give you an example because this has just come up recently, and it'll be old news by the time this broadcast is shown, but it's recent now. So we've got the M420 that people have been asking us for 10 years. And we discovered when we were designing and tooling it that the BC Rail version, they had 8 locomotives, is totally different. It's almost all new tooling to do the BC Rail version. And we know that BC Rail's got a lot of huge fans, and we really wanted to do the BC Rail version. But the M420, no exaggeration, is the most expensive locomotive we've ever tooled. I don't know what it is. It's complex slides on the molds and the way that the slides go. It is costing us like one version, the CN M420, the B and C classes that we're doing, is costing us like 60% more than all the F59s combined. Okay. And it's very expensive tooling. The BC Rail version is like all new, and the P&W version is half new. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm talking about like truck centers change, like everything changes. Okay. So you can't reuse the chassis. And to make it to removable inserts causes problems for the chassis. So you really do need to do a whole new slide. It's very expensive. We don't have the funds right now to do the BC Rail version. And we explained that to our customers. And a lot of the guys said, well, we accept that. You don't have the funds and it's whatever. But a lot of people like keep digging at us on Facebook and online. Thanks for ignoring us BC Rail guys. I would order 10, but all 8, but you don't care about us. And it's like the negative comments. Guys, we've explained it to you. Yeah. We don't have the money. We just don't have the money. And based on our advance orders of the M420, I don't know if we ever will have the money for the BC Rail version, because CN had whatever it was, 70-something units, BC Rail had 8, and I don't know we're going to turn a profit on CN. Okay, so we'll see when we've got the final video and the sounds, the order deadline and all that stuff. But like the negativity, like guys, we bring out BC Rail, we do PGE RDC.
Yeah.
Right? We're not anti-BC Rail, but some of the comments, guys, they're taking it so personally. Like, we hate BC Rail. We don't hate any railroad. I may not like CN's black, green, and yellow paint, which I've said on several occasions, but we don't hate any railroad.
Does this make any sense? This might not make any sense. And by now, you're probably used to the fact that a lot of times I don't make any sense. But recently I was on a flight, and by coincidence, I ended up sitting beside a young man that his parents actually worked for the UN, and he'd spent a lot of time of his life living in Geneva, but he was a Canadian citizen, and he's 30, and he's now into marketing, and he works for a company in Ottawa. And somehow through the conversation, I happened to mention Oh, yeah, I have a podcast, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, what's it about? And I said, well, it's just model railroading. And he says, oh, yeah. And he said, do you get many downloads? And I said, well, you know, we get about 10,000 a month and 500,000 total probably. And he goes, really? I went, yeah. I said, why? He says, like, really? You get that many? And I said, is that a lot? He said, yeah. He said, you want advertising? And I went, no. And he said, and I said, I didn't think it was, he said, no. He said, sure, there's podcasts that get a lot more, but most of the podcasts get a lot less. You know, they're in the 200 and 300 range. Right. And the thing, and he says, you know, niche is becoming a thing. But I think part of the problem that people don't realize, one of the things I've tried to say to some of my regular contributors who are very excited about the response they get, they'll go to the Springfield train show and people will come up to them and go, oh, I listen to you all the time, specifically them, you know?
Great.
And I'll say, what people don't realize is while they're driving in their car, and it sounds like you're listening to CNN and it's done, you know, I try to do really good high-end quality audio. I said, you got to realize that not everybody around you in all their cars is listening to us either. Like the next guy that's listening to us is, you know, a mile away or 5 miles away. And I sense that's the same problem you run into is like the BC Rail guys want a particular thing, but what they don't realize is they're not that big of a group. So you have to try to keep in mind that while, yes, you and your buddies and you found 200 guys on the internet that want to do it, you're not a big group. So therefore, when it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce your model,
yeah,
unless you want to, if you're all willing to pay $1,000 a model, hey, no problem. Jason will get it started on Monday.
Right.
So there's
also talking about that whole cycle and how much it costs to tool something, right? If we take like the cost of 2 freight cars, which is what we estimate it'll cost to tool the BC Rail M420, that's 2 freight cars we're not tooling, right? Just to tool that BC Rail. Now, again, we want to do it. And what we'll probably end up doing with BC Rail is we're going to do it like we done the Amtrak Turboliner. We'll say, okay, we're going to announce it and give them 3 months and say, if we get enough to cover the tooling cost and turn a profit, we'll do it.
Right.
And that's probably how we'll do it because it would suck to bring out an M420 and not bring out the BC Rail one. Right. But we've got a situation like PGE RDCs. We made a video recently of the Canadian RDCs and PGE, I think we'd sold like 20. You know, and we can't set up to do like the 3 different RDC 3s.
Yeah.
And do like 7, 6, and 7. The factory just doesn't work that way. It's mass production. It would be better for us to go get Dan to take him home and paint him himself. All right. Like we just can't do mass production for 20 pieces.
Don't answer this question if you don't want to, but I'm trying to get a grip on like what's a minimum you need to like, okay, for an RDC, which is something that you're making. So you have several different versions, painted versions. Right. What would be like the minimum you would need
for a paint scheme?
Yeah.
We generally need 300 for a paint scheme.
Okay.
Sometimes we don't quite get there. In some products, we are so far beyond 300 that we can swallow on one paint scheme. We can swallow the extra cost to do something on the other paint schemes.
Yeah.
But normally the problem with doing smaller quantities, we had some smaller quantities on the FB2s, and the FA2s, is that it takes the same amount of time to set up all the machinery for 500 pieces as it does for 27 pieces. It does for 1 piece. So the factory becomes really inefficient when you're doing smaller quantities. And then production takes much longer. And then the factory doesn't turn a profit. If the factory does not make any money, they're not going to want to make models anymore. You know, trust me, several times we've had our one factory for 7 years, and the other one for 4 years, and several times my partners in China said, "I think we should just close the factory." Because you know what? This is too much of a headache, and we're not making enough of a profit because of all these crazy different variations. And then when people recently, all the time, say to us, you know, say we're bringing out the H1644, and they'll point to one that's totally unique and different than all the others. Say, "You got to make this one because it's so unique and everyone photographed it." Yeah, but then we got to do all this, set up everything else again.
Yeah,
for the 25 pieces that people wanted, the unique one, right?
That's a really important thing people need to remember. Whether you make 2,500 of something or whether you make one, the setup, the cost of the setup
And
is exactly the
that's
same.
your cost. You're painting masks because you have to, you're masking for the paint. You're printing plates so you can print on all the logos and lettering and everything like that. That is a huge amount of setup. So when someone gets upset that the warning labels on our B36 are not in the correct location for that locomotive number, it's like, we can't afford that. We can't afford to take a whole day to set up the machines for the 60 pieces of that number. Like, you just can't do it.
No,
It's mass production. It's not one at a time production.
All right, let's move on here because we got lots of people. Okay, here's a guy, George Taylor. He's a fan from Ottawa. He says, are there any possibilities that the Steam program will be canceled if demands aren't high enough? As in, would they bin the whole thing after the first few releases if it didn't look like the sales would really support the rest?
The honest answer is yes. There is a possibility that we won't be able to do all the models that we wanted to do. I don't think we would kill the whole program. I think we just start cherry picking the best ones. So I think, for example, the Straight Hudson is on our to-do list for very soon. And that may end up, doing 2816 may end up leapfrogging the D10. They're both under development right now. It's hard. The tooling costs on steam engines is so high.
My God, it must be just.
And I look at people. We announced the D10 and the H6 together, and I think the H6 total numbers so far is fewer than 400, something like that. I haven't checked the numbers recently, but you can't make a plastic diesel steam engine and sell 400.
No.
You're looking at 150,000 US tooling, and 400 engines at 600 retail. Do the math.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not happening.
Is the tooling done in China as well?
Yeah, tooling is done. We don't have in-house mold shops. We have 3 or 4 mold guys that we work with.
Okay.
Who are very, very good. One of them in particular is outstanding, and he's done some incredible, like all those tiny little rivets on the tempo train. Love those. Those rivets are incredible. He did those.
Are those usually like individual, like one or two guys' shops? Are they pretty big shops over there?
One of our shops has the owner who just kind of sits there drinking tea, and then he's got like 2 designers and about 4 or 5 guys in the mold shop. The other one's got, I think, 3 or 4 designers and about 12 guys, 10 to 12 guys in the mold shop. Those are the 2 we use the most. Another one we have is also about 2 designers and like 6, 7 guys.
That must be an endlessly fast. Part of the thing I really like about us. I could say we're friends now, eh?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. One of the things I really enjoy about the friendship and the fact that I have access to ask you questions is it must have been an incredibly life enriching experience to have so much contact with the people in China and doing all that work with all those people.
Oh, of course. And I mean, I've been to China 21 times.
Yeah.
And I do speak Chinese very badly. But it helps. There's a lot of bonding there that happens when I'm able to speak Chinese. The problem is I speak it, but I don't understand it. So I can communicate to you, but if you start talking to me in Chinese, unless you're saying the molds are the right size, or unless you're talking about the 10 things I know what to talk about, I have no clue what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I sound fluent, but I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have really interesting discussions that tend to be one way. So I'll talk in Chinese. They'll talk back at me. I'll look at Colin. He'll translate for me. They'll talk back to him in Chinese. But it's different cultures. It's different. I mean, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's got to be. And don't feel bad about how well you speak Chinese, because I don't really speak English that well. I speak Sudbury really well. Okay, here's one from a fellow named Chris McKagan. Will they release some of the special run N-scale cars they have previously only released through Prairie Shadows? I don't even know what Prairie Shadows is.
Prairie Shadows is a great friend of ours, Jeff Arnold, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he has a company and he does exclusives with us and other people, and everything has to go through him. They're his products. So if we do exclusives for Prairie Shadows, they go through Prairie Shadows.
Okay.
It's just like with any store. A number of stores and organizations have done exclusives with us. Via Rail has done exclusives with us. Who else has done it? CSX did something with us. Various Pacific Western Rail Systems, all these different companies have done exclusive models, Credit Valley Railway. So if we do an exclusive for somebody, that's where you have to get it, because they're the one paying for the goods. So.
And that would probably be like a specific paint scheme?
They'll do a specific paint scheme, or in the case of Prairie Shadows, who'll do specific models. So
really?
If you want the N-scale FPA4 and FPB4, you're going through Prairie Shadows because he's the one who did them. Same thing with the CN Caboose.
All right. One from a fellow named Greg Ammer. How are sales of the Rail Crew products?
Rail Crew is good.
What is Rail Crew?
Rail Crew is a series of accessories that we have. And there's two main products for them. One is it's a switch machine. And the other one is an uncoupler. They're both remote. The switch machine is the only one on the market that actually sits underneath your switch stand. It includes a switch stand casting, and the target and handle of the switch stand rotate with the switch machine. So as it throws the points, the target rotates. I've installed about 40 of them on my layout. On deck 3, I'm just about to start installing them on deck 2. I again get a very good price, but no, they're reasonably priced. Our goal with the Rail Crew switch machines is to be number 2. We know Tortoise will always be number 1, so our goal is to be number 2. But it's really neat having that animation and having the targets. If you're going into operating, you want to see which way your targets are facing on your switch stand, and we include a whole bunch of different etched brass targets. We include like 3 different switch stands, and we're going to probably do more switch stands over the next couple of years. But it's a great product. And the uncoupler, that's really neat. That goes under your track and has a blue light between the rails, and it only turns on when you want it. So if you have, as long as you've got a Kadee compatible coupler, like with the trip pins, magnetic couplers, you turn it on and it uncouples your cars, and you turn it off.
Wow.
And then you're not going to have random uncouplings. And the great thing is that one can be very easily added to a fully scenic ballasted layout because you drill in from underneath. The switch machine is easier before you put in scenery, but not impossible. In my case, I've got one place where I'm going to have to drill in from underneath because the part of the machine is going to be under the adjacent track.
Right.
Luckily on the prototype, they're automatic switches, so I don't have to have a switch stand standing up between 14 feet of space.
Have you, over the years, found has your enthusiasm waned at all for your own model railroad, being so immersed in the business?
My enthusiasm hasn't waned, but my anxiety has gone up about it because I work so hard at Rapido and being a dad, I don't get a ton of time in the layout room.
Right.
In fact, often the only time I get is when I go over to, say, 2 or 3 of my teammates here at Rapido and say, come to my house on Friday. Let's work on a layout. Yeah. Right. Now it's great that I can do that. When, if we have a slower week, I can do that. But I'm building a one lifelong layout.
Yeah.
It's a triple deck Kingston sub. And of course, you look at it occasionally and say, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to love this in 20 years? Yada, yada, yada. But certainly it hasn't. And I'd say that working on my layout increases my enthusiasm for being at Rapido.
Okay.
Because when I work on my layout, I am energized. I am so excited. And, I love seeing that layout come together.
Okay. Cool. Bob Fallowfield, I saw a photo of him working on your layout.
Oh yeah, there's a number. He comes and
is he just a pain in the butt?
No, he's a good buddy of mine. Matt Hermer from ESU has come work a couple of times.
Right,
I got some buddies who come work on the layout.
Okay, cool. Matt Martin, who is actually a train master in Alliance, Nebraska.
Cool.
For the BNSF, young fella. He's got a bunch of questions here. Where do you see the company in 10 years in terms of growth, employees, brand, et cetera? Or do you have basically no idea?
Well, I'd like the company to keep growing. I don't think we can sustain the meteoric growth we've had. Remember, it's very easy to get from 0 to 1 million, then 1 million to 2 million.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep growing. Down the road, it's hard to see where I see the company going. We have to keep doing what we do, making models that we love and continue to innovate. Obviously we're branching out. One of the interesting things that as we produce a bigger catalog, we're often going back and doing models that other manufacturers have still available. The RS11 is a perfect example. That ended up being a huge, huge seller for us. The FA2 is another example where, there's tons of FA2s in the market, but this is a chance to improve. And the latest is the Horizon cars. I mean, the last Horizon cars were tooled in the 80s or early 90s or something like that. And they're very, very basic cars. The Walthers models, and our model is a 2020 state-of-the-art car with all the lighting and the underbody components and the full interior with the antimacassars on the seats and separate seat castings and yada, 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 working marker lights, etc. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to us to revisit models that have been done already, but then there's a challenge of having to convince somebody The model on your layout needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
Right. But truthfully, there's only so many prototypes to do from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There's a lot of what we do is focused on those eras up to the 80s. We don't do a lot of contemporary stuff. But there's only so many prototypes that you do have to go back and retool stuff that other people have done. And our challenge, and always our biggest challenge, is showing people, look, our model is miles above that 25-year-old model on your layout. Yes, you've got 25 good years out of it, but this is a state-of-the-art. This had a 3D scan, for example, of the prototype, or this one is we recorded the sounds from the prototype under load. This has got all the detailed variations. It's not a generic RS11 or an FA2. It's got all the different little steps and the different battery box covers or the different this or different that, right? I mean, our models now, a lot of them have working ground lights, ground inspection lights, that the track lights that come down through the casting in the frame. That's just stuff that couldn't be done with the technology. There were none of these SMDs 25 years ago. So that's our biggest, and I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. If people ask me what's your biggest anxiety, it's just sales. My biggest anxiety is, will we make enough sales to make this product viable? That's always my challenge.
Well, I would think so. That would be I think I could talk to you for a couple hours, because it must be kind of like throwing darts sometimes.
There's a lot of throwing darts. And again, with the N scale stuff, you just don't know. Why does one model sell 4 times as much as 2 others combined? I don't know.
And part of that would probably, you need to be on the internet. You need to be involved in the forums to find out what people are talking about.
Forums are not representative. Forums, if you look at all the guys there could be 1,000 guys on a forum. There could be 5,000 guys on a forum. There's 250,000 model railroaders in North America. The numbers in the 90s or 2000s was 500,000. So you figure even if we've shrunk by 50%, we still got 250,000. But I don't think we've shrunk.
We haven't shrunk.
So there's so many modelers, and so few are on the forums. And the forums tend to skew modern, and they skew freight. They're modern freight. That's where the forums are. Modern freight. And if Facebook too, we put up something modern, all right, our Facebook explodes. We put up something transition era, it's okay. Guess which sells higher for us, right? Now we're known as a transition era manufacturer. Most of our models are transition era, but you the Horizon cars. You put a picture of the Horizon cars on Facebook, our Facebook explodes. Okay, but 1954 diners sold not quite twice as many, but pretty close to twice as many Horizon cars. That's an example, right?
Right.
So the forums and the online community it's not totally representative. It's getting more so as we internet savvy people age.
Yes,
right.
Internet savvy.
The more 75-year-olds who are active on forum that's better for the representation of the forum. But they still they skew modern diesel, modern freight, and that's what. Or in some case, modern passenger. That's what gets the most traction online, and what we sell the most of is transition.
So then, how do you? Where do you go to get your sense of what to do next?
Keep our ears open.
Yeah,
and there's enough guys here that if 5 guys in the office say, "I really want that model," it's going to do well.
Right. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Well, this is a good question. There you go. There can be a lot of negativity and criticism from customers. How do you cope, relieve the stress from this? Well, we pretty much kind of touched on this. How do you relieve the stress?
It's difficult. I think that when you run Rapido, the internet's 24/7. And so I feel I'm running Rapido 24/7. And Jordan, of everyone here at Rapido, Jordan feels the most that he's also working 24/7. The stress has really gotten to him as well. And we've been really working on coping techniques, being able to turn off and not get onto the forums in the evening, being able to actually, as I mentioned before, in one case, to get off a forum altogether. We also have a counselor here at Rapido. He's not in-house counselor, but a counselor that if anyone at Rapido needs guidance,
right,
they go to him. And we've had about 5 or 6 people at the office go to him. When Mike passed away, he came in for a group session. And that's really important to be able to speak to somebody about your anxieties and concerns. And from my perspective as the president of the company, I've just got to do my best to keep reassuring the team, Jordan especially. Jordan, when he was really stressed out with the negativity, I said, Jordan, we're going to my house to work on a model railroad now. And I just dropped everything and we went and just worked on the layout for 4 hours. And he really was able to unwind and just not think about work. And I was telling him, put your phone down, stop looking at the Facebook, just put your phone down. And I've got to guide my team to not let the negativity get to us and to stay positive and stay encouraged. And that's why, calling Dan and telling him this model is amazing, assuring everybody. It's a family here. We all support each other through things like that.
Well, and I think too that what people need to realize is because the negativity bothers you, it's because you want to produce the best models you can.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like being a championship sports team. The reason it bothers you is because you're trying to do such a good job.
If it was just a question of dollars and cents, and,
yes.
Trust me, there's a lot of businesses we can make a lot more money than this one that don't require us to have millions of dollars of credit or whatever it is to be able to pay for all these toolings and stuff. But we all love it. We all want to make the perfect product.
Yeah.
And so it absolutely, it hurts us when we don't succeed on something and that it's hard.
All right. How do you guide decision making for producing a product with so many prototype options available? We kind of touched on that.
Yeah, we touched on that. It's a lot of potluck, or we hope that we get the right thing, and it's a lot of we're all modelers, and so if we all want something, there's a good chance that people will want it.
Just basically a feel of All right. This is a good question. If you were not producing model trains, what would you be doing?
Oh, geez. Well, one day I hope to be able to sell Rapido and be working on my model railroad all day and making limited edition kits of various station buildings from Ontario. But I trained in graphic design before I did the PhD thing, and I would probably have ended up going back to graphic design work.
Okay.
I imagine that's where now that I've been running Rapido for 15 years, I don't think I could go back to that. I think that if I weren't running Rapido, I would be consulting to the model train industry and helping other people make model trains. Right.
Now that Northern Pacific boxcar you did was really successful.
Oh, hugely.
So,
and that's an example where we could do a second run because we so underproduced that we were able for the only time have a successful second run months after the first run.
And have you guys, I know you produce some American models, but are you thinking of producing more in the American?
Oh, a lot of our expansion has been American models, and we're actually planning to do some major expansion in the U.S. We now have 3 full-time people in the and part-time, and 4 including part-time working for us in the States.
Okay.
And 3 of those guys are 3 of our 5 designers are American. And you bet they look at the H1644 and all the prototypes, the American prototypes for that. Look at the PA1. You want a Canadian PA1. There was just 2 demo units. That was it. That's an American engine. So we're doing a lot more American stuff. And that's where we see the future of Rapido, I think, is much more skewed towards American. We're also planning a new expansion into the UK market. We grew in the UK between 2014 and 2018, and then with Brexit uncertainty, we took a step back, and now we're starting the process of expanding. So by 2021, we're going to be a big player, hopefully, in the UK as well.
And is model railroading, I know, is different in Europe, but it seems pretty solid in Europe as well.
Model railroading in Europe and the UK is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. It's much bigger per capita than here.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a different market. You have to be bilingual. You can't take the Canadian American markets we as modelers are very similar. Sure, the Canadian guys are modeling CPCN and say A lot more.
Yeah.
And the American guys might be modeling NP or UP or Santa Fe. But we as modelers are cut from the same cloth. You don't realize you go to the Springfield show, like a third of the people there are Canadian. And you can't tell them apart from the Americans because we look the same, we talk the same, and we share most of the same values. Model railroading in the UK is totally different. Right. There's no aim for the basement empire. It's you build a layout, you take it to shows, you move on, build another layout. There are guys who have built 20 layouts.
Yeah.
And a locomotive like a Class 37 locomotive, which our friends are at AccuScale are making right now. You could do one painting variation and you'll sell 500 of that one locomotive, that one number, that one painting variation. You cannot do that here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that here, unfortunately.
Right. This last question is, he says this is just for himself, so it's kind of like what we were talking about before. Now that there are more phases of the F-40s, will we see them produced by Rapido in the Grand Canyon Railway paint scheme, like the FP4s?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Chris Atkins, he's from Texas. He's from Argyle, Texas.
Right.
And he's been with us he's a regular contributor on the podcast, and he's from Argyle, Texas, which is home of course of the Fighting Sox.
Yeah.
And the Fighting Sox became our mascot.
Oh, great.
We have Fred the Sock.
Great.
I should have brought you. He wants to know if I can pick up his SW1200 while I'm here.
So the SW1200 is a funny project. We thought that we could take our SW1200 RS, the Canadian version, and we could make a few changes into the 1200. And then we discovered that EMD and GMD, EMD is in Illinois and GMD is in where's EMD? LaGrange, Illinois, right?
Yeah.
And GMD is in London, Ontario. Totally different.
Yeah.
So the 1200 ended up costing us more to tool than the 1200 RS because we've had to go back and retool everything. So even to the point where the radiator fan cover in the front sticks out more in Canada or something like that. Like there's all these different details, and we've had to go back and retool everything. It's going to be a while before the 12. Sales are very strong on that, but we have to retool like everything, so it's not coming out till the end of the year at the earliest.
Jeff Schultz, he works with Joe Fugate at Model Railroad Hobbyist. I think he's kind of their man at large, does all sorts of things. What does Jordan think of Star Wars?
What does Jordan think of Star Wars? Jordan's a Trekkie.
I know. So what does he think of Star Wars?
I don't know. I like Star Wars. I like Star Trek too. And Picard is the best Star Trek I've seen since 2001, and I can't wait till every new episode.
Yeah. It looks
I'm in heaven.
good, actually.
I'm in heaven. And Doctor Who is also wonderful. Though it's the season finale, Doctor Who was quite impressive. They basically went back and rewrote 57 years of Doctor Who history. So all the fans are really angry.
Yeah, speaking about outrage on the internet.
Oh yeah.
Negative.
Oh yeah.
Have any, I think we may have covered this a bit. Have any products you had expectations for have any products you've had high expectations for been a real disappointment or just not fulfill expectations? And conversely, which of the products have gone way surpassed the expectations?
So certainly the N-scale F40s, I'm not sure what's going on there. Why the sales are so bad. So that's below expectations. I like to tell a story that early days of Rapido 2008, we announced a new sleeping car for CN. We're doing a whole bunch of CN Supercontinental Line cars, and we announced the Green Series sleeper, which was our second most common sleeper. And I was so excited I needed to have the Green Series sleeper in my fleet, and the sales were in the toilet, and I didn't understand why. And it wasn't until after we'd done a whole big, more paint schemes, did a whole PR push, and then I had it on the track beside my base of the Series sleeper, the 10.5. The green is the 646, and the other one's 10.5, and they look the same from outside. And I knew they're different. The interior is different. The underbody is different. But actually, the exterior... So people saw an ad and said, I got that already. So that did terribly. Eventually, sales picked up once we did all the marketing. This is a different car. Really, it's a different car. But the most successful sort of sleeper hit is probably the HO scale GMD one. That for a unique engine that mainly ran in the prairies and now it's all across Canada. It's still running today, built in 1958.
Right.
And that ended up being one of our most successful products ever.
Would you do a rerun of that?
We've done them all.
Really?
So maybe down the road, a few years down the road, but we've done them all.
Was it more successful than the RDC? Because the RDC seemed
the RDC, the first run RDC was also totally well beyond our expectations because everyone was saying, come on, they've been cheaper RDCs on the market for years. They flooded the market. And I said, no, but it's not been done the way we do it. And the RDC we sold like twice as many as we predicted.
Well, and the one that affected me the most was you so graciously donated $10 from every of your well cars last year. And I mean, that sold out. What'd you have, 300? And that was gone in 36 hours.
Yeah, sold right away. We actually need to make more. The problem is that and one of the reasons that took so long to bring out is that die cast mold is very poorly designed. We don't use that mold maker for stuff. So when we inject it, there's always injection problems and a huge wastage rate. These are stuff people never know about, right?
Yeah, I know.
Why haven't you made more well cars? Why did it take so long? Because it took forever to make these.
Yeah.
So we're debating. We're probably going to end up fixing up, like redoing that main body mold, because there's a lot of demand for that.
Yeah, well, and I just want to say on the air while I got a chance, that was incredibly generous of you to do that for my One More Year fund, which goes all towards, you were talking about anxiety and everything, and the thing I discovered through my journey through cancer is that the anxiety and the mental anguish is unbelievably difficult, and that part of the hospital gets the least amount of money. So with your help and Tim Warris and Jim Scores and others, we've raised over $60,000 for that part of the hospital.
Amazing.
And all I got to do is walk 100 kilometers. Okay, this is kind of an interesting question. We're almost to the end. I've often heard Jason talk about the only place trains can be manufactured without losing money is in China, which everybody pretty much says, because that is the only place where there is the expertise and cost of labor is so much considerably lower than North America, but he never addresses the transportation cost, etc. If it really is a labor-intensive job and much assembly is required, then a kit should be tremendously cheaper, but it is not. What am I missing in the economics? Well, first off, I can help answer that question because people aren't interested in kits very much.
Oh, they don't sell.
They don't sell. Yeah, the only person I've ever heard with any kind of positivity about kits was David Lilbach from Tangent.
Right.
But he basically sells them. He'll have a Penn Central boxcar where he sells it without lettering.
Right.
So you can letter it for yourself, or tank cars that are already pre-painted and you can decal them or decal them for your layout. But I haven't really heard of anybody that's had success.
Yeah, so the situation is that costs in China have gone up a lot. And I really wonder 10 years from now where trains will be made. It may not be China. I'll openly say that. Costs have gone up enormously, so that the margins on a freight car, one manufacturer said to me, I made 5,000 freight cars, and I think at the end of the run, I netted $500. Wow. So he netted 10 cents a freight car, right? So the cost of making them has gone up. So what we do with, say if we do a kit, we could have sales for 80 kits. Out of 5,000 freight cars, we could have sales of 60 kits, 50 kits. That's it.
Yeah. And
so what we do is we pay the factory full price for those as a way to help their bottom line. The factories are increasing their prices. It's not like there's nobody in a suit with a greedy little grin rubbing his hands together in this hobby. Nobody from the mold guy to the factory owner to the manufacturer in North America to the hobby shop owner. Nobody is making money hands over fist. Okay. And so if costs are going up, it's because they just are going up. So there's no pretend increase in costs. They go up. Right. So in the case of that, in our case, what I do is we pay the same amount for those kits to the factory as everything else, just so that it can help the factory bottom line.
Okay.
Right. So that's why our kits don't come at a lower price. Also, when we do a kit, we've got to have new packaging designed just for that kit. It's 60 pieces. Like people don't realize how little interest there is in kits right now.
Yeah. And writing the instructions for a kit would be.
We've now got to put. I don't think we don't do the instructions anymore because spend a week writing instructions for 60 pieces. It's just it's not a good use. I'd rather Josh spent that time designing an all new freight car than writing the instructions for the kit. So we include an exploded diagram and I say good luck.
And in all fairness, on another podcast just recently, we call it Virtual Hobby Shop, where I'll just have 5 or 6 guys shooting crap. Is AccuRail kind of fills that niche anyways.
Yes. And they're made in USA too.
Yeah, exactly. And so he was talking about transportation. You must have somebody that's just in charge of keeping track of, where X is and as it goes along in the container and everything like that. That must be a fairly not a terribly difficult job, but you got to keep your finger on the pulse of where your product is.
We know when it leaves China. And we know that in a normal situation, which we're not in recently, but a normal situation, 5 weeks later, it shows up here. And we get an email every day saying, "Where is your container?" Oh, it's on the water. And then and then as it goes on a train from Prince Rupert to Brampton, we get updates. It's in Endako, it's in Edmonton, it's here, it's there. Other places that begin with E. It goes all the way across Canada, and then it shows up here. Transportation costs are actually very, very low because model trains are very, very small. So when you think about it, that we could have a full run of N-scale locomotives on one pallet. And that run could be worth $300,000, $400,000 on one pallet.
Yeah.
Right. So the transportation cost of one pallet is a few $100s. It's not that much. I
was going to ask a really good question. Oh yeah, we might as well talk about it. This will be released on the third Monday of May.
Sure.
So. Coronavirus and your factories. Where are you with that?
Well, remember, we're talking in the past, so we don't know where we will be in May.
Right, but now
where we are right now, the factories were shut down for an extra 3 weeks. One of them is being shut down for an extra month. There's one factory we work with that is just we do work with occasionally, and that one's been really affected. It's hugely affected. It's pushed back all our deliveries. And it's been a challenge. There's also now a massive labor shortage because everybody needs to catch up. So we opened up one of the factories last week, and we only had 20 people in the whole factory, including the designers and everybody. So there were 8 people in the assembly line. The normal is normally 70 people at the factory. And yesterday, 2 days ago, because I heard about it yesterday, 8 people got up and left because they were offered a ton of money to go work somewhere else. Not a model train factory, just another factory.
Just another factory.
Because people have now, they're so behind schedule that there's a huge labor shortage of workers. And so that's now increased our costs because salaries, you have to meet what everyone else is paying. So that's increased the cost. So that's a problem. We can never ship anything by air. We often will ship products, especially N-scale because they're so small. We'll ship them by air. That saves 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? Or saves 4 weeks. Saves about a week to go by air. And every company in the world who makes in China is going to need to ship stuff by air to meet Christmas and stuff like that. So the air freight rates are going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a challenge for us in terms of cash flow because we had a certain delivery schedule. And now it's all being shifted.
Now that you've been to China 21 times, do you have it down to kind of a fine art? Do you like particular?
I have the same room I stay at the Park Lane Hotel in Chang'an, and it's room 1608. Now that I've said that, I'll be blogging from China and someone will knock on the door. Hi, I read your blog. It's please go away. I was sleeping. But I'm always in that room. And when I walk into the hotel, the door guy says, "Jason, how are you?" And I say, "Frankie, good to see you." Right. And the cleaning lady came in. On Saturdays, I don't work, so I just sit in the hotel room all day. And the cleaning lady came in. And we recognize each other, and I can speak a little bit Chinese. "Oh, hi, how are you?" And she says to me in Chinese, "Why are you always in this room?" I said, "I like this room." "我很喜欢这个房间."
Which is?
I really like this room. And I get a room that it's a suite. And so we will interview new designer stuff in the hotel room.
Okay.
Or we'll also have I'm Jewish, so Friday night dinner is a big deal. So when I'm in China, Friday night, all my design staff, all my top engineers and partners in the factory, they all come to the hotel and we all sit around like 8 people. I order in the food from an organization called Chabad in Shenzhen, which is about an hour drive, and they deliver a hot Friday night Sabbath meal to my room in China, and we all eat together, and it's wonderful. It's so bonding. We tell stories. Mohan was there last time and he doesn't know any Chinese, so he was just sitting there smiling. I'm having a good time.
This is going to sound kind of weird, but I like to on the podcast. I mean, it's become so the people that do listen to it, podcasting is kind of like I've described it as flat Earth.
Right.
The people that know podcasting and are into podcasting and like you podcast, they're all about it. They're in it. But when you get to the end of those people,
it drops off a cliff.
It drops off, and I still can't establish. I think it's a very small portion of the population that is into podcasting, but is like making an impact. And anyways, the thing I was going to say is, you're a really easy person to respect.
Thank you.
Yeah. I respect like you talked about your faith and I respect about how you, people need to know that you're the kind of person that you can feel good about that is making a difference in the world.
That means a lot to me if you hear you say that, Lionel. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to, even though you're a Montreal Canadian fan.
It's okay. My team's in the toilet right now.
Yeah. Which is something that makes me get up in the morning.
No, I appreciate you say that. And I often question, first of all, I question, I think everyone does at some point, what am I doing? How did I get here? But one of the things that I try and practice, and I'm not always successful, is gratitude and being grateful to God for putting so many things in place to allow me to have this role, and to allow me to have the family, Sadura and the kids that I've always dreamed of. And I'm very, very, very lucky. And I hope that, I've helped to make other people happy and to fulfill their modeling goals, ambitions, dreams, desires, etc. But I think all of us need to practice gratitude. Even if you're not a believer in God, you can still be grateful. And we need to work on that, especially when things aren't going so well. And that's really when things are great. We just delivered a successful B36-7 model and we could pay our bills this month, it's like, thank you. This has been great. Right. But when things are really crummy, when you've got product problems or family issues or health issues, as you've had to deal with yourself, that's the time when you have to really look at the things in your life that you can be grateful for.
Exactly.
And practicing. And I try and have a gratitude list, things that I'm grateful for, and get up in the morning. I haven't done it in a few weeks. I gotta get back to it, but get up in the morning and just take a few minutes, put your hand on your heart and just say the things that you are grateful for. And doing that, even if things are crummy, and there've been plenty of times in my life when they've been really bad. There were the times we couldn't pay our mortgage because just Rapido had no money.
Right.
There was the times when I was, having panic attacks over anxiety or midlife crisis, which resulted in Rapido owning a bus. But there's times when they're not so good, times when they're good.
Yeah.
And I think gratitude is very, very important.
I think you need to know that comes across. And you're just one of those kind of guys that, makes you feel good. You're one of those people that makes me feel good about being part of the human race.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to end with this question. So, owning two factories in China, is that still, you feel like you're glad you've done that?
So we don't technically own them. We're partners in them.
Right.
And that was the best thing we could possibly have done. We realized that we just needed a steady source of supply. And so it was the smartest thing. And the factories happily do work for other clients. So this is a call out. Anyone wants to make model trains, give me a shout and I'll put you in touch with Colin or Huang to do work with them. But that stabilized the supply. When you're one of many, many clients, it's very hard to get your product to the front of the line because there's many, many clients. And sometimes the factory's just busy, so they take longer to get back to you or whatever else. So the first thing we did in 2011 was hire Huang as just to design model trains from his kitchen table. And then we started with Huang the factory in 2013, and then we started the second one in 2016. That's it. There's stress involved in being involved in the running of the factory. We have no recourse. Okay, so when something goes wrong, people will say, well, tell the factory you won't pay. Okay, the right hand is going to tell the left hand you're not getting any money. Right? So we have to, or if the factory's got QC issues and we catch them in China and we have to remake stuff, and thankfully we do catch like 90-something% of our QC issues in China. So say a shipment's delayed 3 weeks, right? And I go to Janet and say, send more money to China. She says, but they haven't shipped us anything. I said, but they got to keep the doors open, so send the money. So she says, we're paying for stuff that's 6 months away. I said, send them more money. So that's the biggest challenge is that you can't just say, remake this or I won't pay you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because can't do that.
Yeah, you can stand in front of a mirror and go, I'm telling you, if you don't get this done.
Exactly. But in the long run, Rapido is only successful today because of the choice that we made. And a lot of the obscure prototypes that we've been able to tool, we've been able to do so because we are more vertical, which means that we have more control over costs and things like that. So we're not paying a bunch of middle people.
Yes.
Most model train manufacturers, they pay their factory in China, but the factory in China is probably not making the molds. They're going to another subcontractor to make the molds. And in some cases, they're going to a subcontractor who's making 2 of the molds, and he's subcontracting out the other 10. So you could have all these people in the line who are taking a piece of the pie. So by having those factories, there's no one taking a piece of the pie, and we're able to tool something a little more obscure that we won't sell as many of because we've been able to save 20, 30% on tooling.
Okay, so did you just wake up, bolt upright one night and go, I need my own factory?
I've been working with my friend Colin in China since 2005, or late 2004. In fact, Rapido is 15 years old now. And I've been doing it full time, almost 15 years. And from about 2010, Colin was saying, we need our own factory. We need our own factory. Colin's Chinese.
Yeah,
we need our own factory. Because we were using other factories and she said, we need our own factory. So he sort of, I remember this one trip and it was an aha moment. It was 2013. It was April, and Bill and I went to China together, and we were working with like 2 or 3 different factories, and like stuff just wasn't happening. It wasn't getting done to our desired spec, and it wasn't getting done in our timeline. And we're sitting at a vegetarian restaurant in Shenzhen around the table, Colin, Huang, Bill, and me. And we're like, what are we going to do? Like this GMD1, it was the GMD1 we were working on at the time. It's never going to come out. Like the mold's quality is not good enough. We're going to have to remake the stuff we're going to use. Yeah. And like finally I said, like, Huang, why don't we just start our own factory? We've been talking about it for 2.5 years. Let's just start our own factory. And Huang is hemming and hawing. And then Colin shouts at Huang and says, Huang, you're so Chinese. He says, just say what you feel. Stop hemming and hawing. Just say what you feel. So Huang says, yeah, I want to start a factory. And oh, by the way, here's all the savings I put aside for it. Oh, and here's my friend Zoe who wants to come in as a partner. So we started a factory. That was April. The factory opened its doors in July with 5 employees.
Wow. So Rapido's in partnership with some guys in China.
Yeah.
And everybody works. And so don't answer these questions if you don't want to. So how much other work percentage-wise would you have? Like how much of the time was it like
to
25?
Do for other customers?
Yeah.
Oh, our goal is 50%.
Okay.
We would love to be 50% for other people. Right now, I'd say it's maybe 15 or 20.
Okay.
But Colin is really looking for more customers, and Huang is looking for more customers. So people can just contact me, and I'll put them in touch with Huang because his English isn't as good. They generally go through me, but with Colin's fluent, so they'll just talk directly with Colin.
And how did you meet Colin?
It was just my wife's friend's sister's friend's husband. He knew Colin.
And then you just contacted him through email and away you went.
And Colin and I, we met on MSN. We talked on MSN. We got to know each other. I went to China and we met in person. We got along really well, and the relationship has grown in all those years. And
so here's an interesting question. Is it the same as meeting somebody that you get to be friends with in North America? You go there and the chemistry's there and you just hit it off and away you go?
Colin and I got along really well from day one. I see Colin as almost family.
Right.
I've seen his daughter. His daughter was born 3 months before we met. My son was born 2 months after we met.
Sure.
So the 2 kids, we've watched them grow up.
Yeah.
His wife is beautiful and wonderful and so friendly, and he lives with his parents who are also very friendly. It's just, they're family. Yeah, he's someone I've known so long. We've had such memories together. Like the time, there's a period of 33 days in the Jewish calendar where you don't cut your hair. So everyone goes and gets get their hair cut before that period.
Right.
And then I forgot. So I'm in China And I'm like waiting for that day to start because my hair is just way too long and it's just very uncomfortable because I hadn't been cut in 2 months.
Right.
And so we're in Shenzhen near Colin's house. I said, Colin, I have to get my hair cut. And he says, what? I got to get a haircut. My hair is too long. Okay. So he takes me to his stylist. Now in China, everyone has straight black hair. So you don't go to the barber, you go to a stylist and they style your hair. And like men, women, everybody, you style, color, because you want to look distinctive because there's 1.3 billion people with the same hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So there's all these different ways to style your hair. And there's hairstylists they're open until 2:00 in the morning because people come out of the factories and they want to, shift ends at 8:00 and they want to go and get their hairstyle. So we go to his stylist and they sit me down and the guy wants to do all this stuff to me. And I said, no, I want 6 millimeters everywhere. Okay. And I'm explaining it like, liu hami, do liu hami. Right? All 6 millimeters. And he's like, no. And he starts bringing me pictures of all these different heads. I can do this and I can do that. And I said 6. So he takes out the scissors. I said, no scissors. I wanted the buzz cut. Right. So he went and found the clippers. Hadn't been used in I don't know how long. Okay. They hadn't been oiled and it was the most painful haircut of my life the whole time. I'm sitting there and Colin's watching me I think Bill was there too. He's watching me get my hair cut. And, ouch.
I was going to say, if they haven't been oiled.
And Colin's the whole time saying, no, Jason. Come, he'll sit down. He'll make you look like this picture. We'll put some color. We'll do some gel. Like that's the kind of memories you have in China. Right?
Yeah,
Like that's a different cultural thing.
Well,
they style their hair and we go to the barber.
Must be just it's got to be incredibly. It's just got to be incredibly. You're going to be even more interesting. I'm going to do this on a regular basis. You're adding. You know what? There are people all over the world that listen to this podcast, and you're adding. What I've realized from the podcast is we make a connection with people.
Yeah.
And what you've done today is you've made a real connection with people, and people are. It helps people get through to the next day. When you talk about being grateful, they're grateful for the podcast. The people that are listening are devoted to it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
My last question, because I'm trying to understand the industry, and I really don't understand if you don't want to answer this question. But the thing I talked to Tangent, I talked to the guys at Exactrail, and I talked to, Scaled Trains, and I talked to everybody. And everybody is getting their stuff manufactured in China. Like, how many, and I understand that you probably don't want to tell me a number, but like, how do you determine how many to make of something?
So we used to make zero inventory. Order for 1,000, make 1,001. Now we make a little bit of inventory, but not a lot. Occasionally we've done a surprise run, and sometimes it works where it sells out in a week, and sometimes doesn't. So we still have N-scale Osgood Bradley coaches. If anybody would want some, they look really nice. Southern Pacific, Cotton Belt. Come on, get yours. Get big discount if you want it. So we base it on our advance orders. So we go by our pre-orders. If we look at the order book and the pre-orders are not good, then we have two choices. We can cancel the project. But if we've already tooled it, we can't. So then we just delay it. So the N-scale F40, we're just going to postpone it until those orders pick up. And they do pick up. Whenever we postpone it, the orders, it gives more time for people to think about it. They see, we put more videos up. They see if we go do a show and they see it in person. So the orders do pick up. But we have to base it on the orders, right? Because you can't just make, I want to make a GMD1. I'm going to make an extra 1,000 hoping they'll sell. They won't.
Right.
You won't sell the 1,000 GMD1s. You might sell an extra 1,000 gondolas or boxcars.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when it comes to freight cars, you can actually, Dave at Tangent's model, he'll just make a few thousand of them, just say they're here.
Yeah.
Right. And with freight cars, you can do that. But locomotives are really expensive. Right. And what if you bring out that surprise run of FPA4 locomotives at the same time that someone's brought out, RS3 that people need or whatever else? Yeah. Well, hang on a second. Where's my budget, right? I've already got an FPA4. I don't have an RS3. I'm going to go buy the RS3. I'm going to pass on the FPA4. Not because I don't want it. It's because I haven't got the funds for it right now.
Yeah, one or the other.
So you can't just hope for the best. You got to base it on the pre-orders when it comes to locomotives, definitely.
Okay. Well, do you think you'll expand more and more into freight cars just because it's easier?
We are expanding into freight cars.
Yeah.
I can tell you we are. I can open with you about that. We have currently several new freight cars in development.
Okay.
And that we're going to keep working on freight cars.
I got to tell you, I love that Northern Pacific car.
Oh, I love it too. It's gorgeous.
Oh,
I have no
God.
need for it on my layout. I love it.
I've been drooling over that thing ever since it came out. I had no use for it. And then I bought a couple. I'm like, I gotta have that. It's just like I gotta have that. I forget
they
where I
were
bought.
on from the 1930s to the 1950s. You'd see those on almost any manifest freight. Like They were everywhere. You'd see them like they weren't just out west. You'd see them. Them all over, especially Winnipeg. Like those shots of Winnipeg, all the rail yards downtown.
Yeah,
there's like one after another. Northern Pacific box.
Yeah. So how do you think this went?
I think it was great. I think that people, we've been talking almost 2 hours. People are tired of hearing us, but
they love it. They love this stuff because it's something. The thing of it is, this has never been available before in model railroading, right? You couldn't do this and put it in a magazine. You couldn't put a 2-hour conversation in a magazine,
right?
And to watch it on video, like you can watch people talk for a while on video, but now for people
you play it in the car. That's the best.
Play it in the car. You play it while you're working on your layout, whatever. So it's going really. I'm very gratified. The gratitude that I have and I started doing this strictly as I wonder what this would sound like. I wonder what I would sound like. Right. And that was it. Right. There was no master plan. There was no grand plan. It was just one day I went, I think I'll try this.
I started Rapido so I could have a turbo on my layout. We're working on a new one, by the way.
Well, and I started this because I could become friends with you. There you go. All right, so that's it. So now we're going to tell everybody that our email address is modellerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L, like LRC, not 2 L's like Lionel. And we have a website, modellerslife.com. I hope I said the email right. It's Modeler's Life. There's no way on that. And it's our website is modellerslife.com. So if you go there, you're going to see all kinds of stuff and updates about our latest podcasts and the crew page and all sorts of things. And when this is released, I will be happy to give it to you, and you can stick it right on your website if you want.
Please let me know when it's out. Yeah. You didn't tell me last time.
Well,
kind of missed it.
That's because I'm a one-man show, and I barely. The number one rule, as I was telling you halfway through this, was I heard this Kevin Smith. From the guy that made the Clerks movie, and he said that number one rule about podcasting is you got a consistency,
right? Consistency.
Right. So I put out one every Monday, one every Tuesday, and that's what I concentrate on is making sure I get those podcasts out.
Excellent.
So everything else after that is secondary.
We'll keep our ears open.
Yeah. So now it's the end of the podcast, and you've been on once before. Do you remember what you have to do at the very end?
Oh, it was something silly. What was it?
You have to say happy rails to you.
Happy rails to you.
But not yet.
Oh, darn.
So as the sun set, I don't have the script in front of me, so I'm going to have to wing this. Let me think. Oh, as we close the barn doors, as the sun slowly sets over the back 40, and we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, it's time for you to say...
Happy rails to you, eh?
Yeah.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.